UK Wine Show, show number 854. Albarino, New Zealand. Is it any good? Hi guys, my name's Chris Scott.
And I'm Jane Scott.
And together we founded 3050 and the UK Wine Show, the world's first wine podcast. This week we're talking with Ian Quinn from Two Terraces in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand. Ian is an exponent of Albarino grape variety grown in New Zealand, and though he doesn't make wines, he is a dedicated viticulturalist supplying Albarino to around 10 different winemakers in New Zealand who have been experimenting with this new grape variety for New Zealand and producing a number of different styles. Jane and I, when we were traveling around New Zealand, we really enjoyed drinking a lot of Albarino, so we started hunting it out, and Ian was the first person we really spoke to who knew quite a bit about it. We're going to be finding out about the different clones, the styles of wines they make in New Zealand, and why Albarino could be a very good insurance crop for Chardonnay. I hope your week's been pretty good. I've been in the office pretty much. I did manage to interview Nicola Bates from WineGP. We're going to be putting that out as part of our 20 years of podcasting. We've got a couple of shows for that period of time. And we mentioned last week, and I said I'd get to it at the top of the show, about our Patreon get-together. And we're going to be talking about the New Zealand trip, Jane.
That's right. We've scheduled a Patreon wine chat for Wednesday the 20th of May at 7:30 UK time. I've emailed on Patreon, so hopefully our Patreon members will have seen that, and we'll be putting that in the diary. We'd love to meet up. We've had quite a few patrons join us recently, so it would be nice to see some new faces. And yes, we're going to be sharing insights from our recent travels through the wine regions of New Zealand, but strangely, we're going to be opening a bottle of Lambrusco.
Yeah, make sure you've got your bottle of Lambrusco.
Or you can bring something from New Zealand that you think might catch our eye. We'd love to see what you enjoy drinking as patrons. So, Wednesday the 20th of May at 7:30 p.m. UK time. See you there.
Great. And do we have any new patrons this week?
Yes, we've got quite a few new patrons this week, Chris. We've got Laura, Katie, Sonny and Wouter. So thank you for joining our Patreon community. I've been in touch with you by email, and I've heard from Wouter. He says our Level 4 podcast really helped him to pass. He had it running on his headphones every possible moment, especially the tasting recaps. And he said, I want you to know how valuable your content was and is to me still. Go 3050. So thanks, Wouter. And thank you, Laura, Katie and Sonny, too, for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys. And don't forget, as members of Patreon, you get access to 2 different flashcard decks that change every week. This week they were on Southern Rhone for Level 3 and Level 4 on Cava. You also get daily quiz, multi-choice quiz question that pops up every day, a different one every day. But we've got our Patreon flashcard question, Jane. And the question is,
which red grape variety is the most important in Southern Rhone?
What do you think, Jane? You got an idea?
Well, have a little think about that, Chris, and hopefully come up with the right answer.
We'll get the answer from you and the answer for the listeners, if they're different, at the end of the show. But next up, we've got the news.
Well, first up this week, France has granted a 120-day emergency approval for Axpera, AXPERA, giving wine growers a new tool against downy mildew in 2026. The biocontrol product can now be used during peak spray months while regulations consider full approval. The authorisation, issued by the French Ministry of Agriculture, follows industry requests and will run from May to August 2026. It follows a similar 2025 approval and comes as regulators near a final decision on permanent use. Axpera stands out for how it works. Rather than acting as a conventional fungicide, it uses compounds derived from amoeba to both disrupt the pathogen and stimulate the vine's natural defences through induced systematic resistance. This dual mode reduces infection pressure while priming the plant to resist disease. In practice, Axpera is designed for integrated pest management programs. It is used preventatively and in rotation, helping growers lower reliance on copper and reduce resistance risks linked to single-site chemistry. With mildew pressure rising and copper restrictions tightening, Expera offers a timely addition. While not a standalone solution, it fits neatly into modern spray programs, bridging the gap between traditional chemistry and next-generation biological control.
For organic growers, Expera is particularly significant because it offers a non-copper option that still fits within the strict requirements of organic and biodynamic producers. Copper remains effective, but it's increasingly restricted due to its heavy metal soil contamination. Experia's biological control mode gives organic producers a much needed tool that they can use as part of their spraying program. So it's potentially an important step forward for sustainable and organic viticulture in Europe. It's primarily used as a preventative method, and if you do have a big outbreak of downy mildew or powdery mildew, etc., then it won't actually remove it. It won't cure the vineyard of a problem, but it will help to stop it occurring. Quite an interesting and important fungicide that will help people wean themselves off that really nasty copper sulfate. What's the next story, Jane?
Well, US wine imports fell 8.3% in 2025, a $565 million decline, highlighting pressure on trade, shifting consumer demand, and uneven consumption patterns. New York, California, and Texas drove 50% of the fall, while other states declined by a lesser degree. The downturn coincided with tariff disruption on European wine, which was ruled illegal by the US Supreme Court, adding policy uncertainty and expected refunds across affected goods. Despite pockets of growth in states like Pennsylvania and Oregon, the overall picture points to a cooling import market for wine and evolving drinking habits across the United States.
The US government's policy of isolation appears to be working well, with wine leading the way. The US now imports markedly less wine and exports even less wine. The policies to drive that may have been illegal, but the direction of travel that Trump campaigned for, a smaller, more isolated US, is clear to see and seems to be working particularly for the wine trade. What's the last story, Jane?
Well, staying with the US government is seeking to introduce tariffs similar to those struck down by the Supreme Court, but the move is being slowed by legal constraints and strict investigation rules, as well as the risk of WTO challenges from trading partners. Officials are instead relying on alternative trade law tools, such as Section 301 and national security provisions under Section 232, which require formal investigations into alleged unfair practices or trade imbalances. These processes involve months of evidence gathering, public consultation, and detailed product-by-product justification before any tariff can be imposed. Unlike the previous emergency-based approach, broad blanket tariffs are unlikely to pass legal scrutiny, forcing the government to design highly specific measures targeting individual goods or sectors. This increases administrative delay and exposes the policy to legal appeals domestically and potential dispute settlement challenges at the World Trade Organization, adding further uncertainty for importers and trading partners.
Well, I need to set the record straight here again. I said something that wasn't absolutely true. I found out this week. A couple of weeks ago, I said that wine dealers and importers will receive their tariffs that were paid, part of the $166 billion in tariffs that were illegally charged to US consumers. And in general, I said that US consumers paid the higher price but will not receive the refund. But this week, the US news broadcaster NPR reported that freight forwarders such as DHL have agreed to reimburse customers who made direct imports via and were hit by the additional tariffs passed on by DHL under the IEEPA regulations. That was the emergency regulations brought in to try and justify the tariffs. FedEx and UPS have also made similar pledges. So if you have imported wines and you have used a carrier to bring the wines in, you may get that tariff back. Otherwise, for most wines in the US consumer won't see anything. They've just paid the higher price. Okay, Jane, let's get into this week's Friday
Lambrusco.
Lambrusco.
I've been waiting for this, Chris. Now, that bottle looks particularly interesting.
Okay, well, it is a wine. It is a Lambrusco. It is known as the Berganti No Autoclave Rosso dell'Emilia IGT Fazzenti Biological, and it was £15.12. So this wine is produced by Berganti, and it's a blend of Sorba, Salamino, and a new grape variety we haven't come across before called Pignaietto. And Pignaietto is a white grape variety from northern Italy, mainly grown in the Emilia-Romagna region. It's 12%. It's a pet nat, and it does not have a cork.
That's what I was noticing. It's just been closed with a beer cap, hasn't it?
Yep. And the reason they've done that is because it's a low intervention wine. They're trying to make a natural wine. So this is like a natural Lambrusco. And because of that, they don't add any SO2. So the oxygen seeps in through the cork and oxidizes the wine. Whereas if you put a beer cap in there, you don't get any oxygen getting in there. It keeps the wine as fresh as possible. So...
Well, this one's much easier to open then, isn't it, Chris? Crack it open. Oh, nice fizz. Glug, 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 glug. I quite like that sound.
Much darker.
It is. Now, this is what I would expect from a Lambrusco.
Remember, we had one like this. It was the Nivola Grasparossa from Majestic, and it was dark like this.
Yeah. I think this is probably the second darkest, isn't it, of the 6 or so that we've tried.
On the nose, it's got a little bit of that pet nat funk, hasn't it?
But I'm also getting cherries.
Yep.
But yes, it is
Morello
a bit...
cherries, sour cherries, that type of thing.
It is a bit barnyardy, isn't it, Chris?
Yep.
Our favourite smell.
Classic natural wine pet nat type of thing. Bit darker. Right, it's a Fazzenti, so not too fizzy. Let's have a taste. Pretty dry. Well, it's a pet nat, so secondary fermentation is done in bottles, so there is no way of stopping that fermentation. So you're always going to end up with a dry wine.
Quite grippy, isn't it? Quite a few tannins in there.
Yeah, more tannins than probably the most tannic wine
I think so.
We've had so far. And again, if it's a natural wine, they're trying to use tannins as an antioxidant to help preserve the wine. So that makes sense.
It has got a bit of a bitter, drying finish, hasn't it?
Is that the tannins though?
Not sure. I've just got like a bitterness in my mouth. The Aperol bitterness.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Actually, when you pointed it out, they've extracted a little bit too much tannins, and they've just they've got a little bit of bitterness from the extraction, so a little bit of astringency coming through from over extracting the tannins, but not. I mean, we found that with one of the other wines, where the Vola Grasparossa from Majestic, it had that real bitter bite right at the very end, and it cleans. It's a cleaning thing.
Do you remember the chap who described bitterness as that Negroni taste? And that's what I'm getting here.
Yeah.
But I think there's not enough fruit there for me.
I mean, on the mouth, it doesn't have a lot of fruit coming through. But it's certainly a different style to anything we've tried. It's different to the darker wine we had from Majestic, and it's got more tannin structure, and it's got a little bit of that bitterness from lots of extraction as well. But we'll be enjoying this later on.
Cheers, Chris.
All right, Jane, while I'm drinking this lovely little Lambrusco, why don't you give us a reminder of this week's Patreon flashcard question?
The question is, which red grape variety is the most important in Southern Rhone?
Okay, we will give you the answer to that after the interview, which is coming out next with Ian Quinn. Ian is the owner of Two Terraces, along with his partner, and they are based in Hawke's Bay. We popped out to see them when we were travelling through New Zealand. Ian was recommended to us because he is one of the big producers of Albarino. Now, Albarino is not a big grape variety in New Zealand at the moment, but when you listen to what Ian has to say, you'll see that it actually fits in a viticultural niche that might be quite useful for some people. And at the moment, 10 people are making Albarino wines from his grapes. So let's have a listen to what Ian has to say about Albarino and whether Albarino is a grape for New Zealand. Hi, my name's Chris Scott and I'm here with Ian Quinn. How are you, Ian?
Good, thanks. Great to have you visit us.
Yes. You are Mr. Albarino Man, not Albarino Brothers, but the Albarino Man in Hawke's Bay here.
Yeah, we have a good sized planting of Albarino. We're based on the Mangatahi Terraces, sort of inland from the Hiratonga Plains. With around 5 hectares, split between a Spanish and a Portuguese selection.
You might hear in the background it's not people bunny shooting. We like to kill bunnies in New Zealand, don't we? In England, they're like, oh, I love bunny rabbits. It's not that. It's bird season, isn't it?
Yeah, we're just getting closer to harvest, probably 2 or 3 weeks away. So at this point, the grapes are getting ripe and the birds are coming looking for them.
Mm. And so you have the sometimes it's clappers, but these sound like percussion guns.
We do a mixture of things. These, what you can hear is gas guns, so they just randomly fire off 3 shots. It's just an explosion of gas, doesn't harm anything. And we also use net. We ride around with an air horn in the side by side, and we also use a bird scaring laser, which kind of creates movement in the vineyard and makes them a bit unsettled.
Nice.
Actually, while we're on that, one thing I've noticed is, we're sort of 2/3 organic and sort of tending more and more towards regenerative viticulture, and so the more flowers and cover crops and the more seeds that we have in around the vineyard, the more the birds are kind of focusing on that rather than grapes.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, Steve Smith said to me a while ago, if you think about it, the seeds have really concentrated protein and have a lot more nutrition than a grape with juice and sugar in it. So if you've got a bit more diversity in the vineyard, there's actually potential for birds to kind of focus on that a bit more than the grapes.
Well, let's get back to Albarino, because that's the topic of the conversation today, so to speak. You've got 5 hectares, which makes you the largest Albarino grower in Hawke's Bay.
Yeah, I think from memory there's something like 65 hectares planted in New Zealand now. And that's probably doubled since we made the decision to plant it back in, I think it was 2017.
Mm-hmm. Why Albarino? And also, you went from 0 to 5 hectares, didn't you? That's quite ballsy, because it is quite a new grape variety for New Zealand.
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest drivers for us planting Albarino, apart from liking it and seeing the potential of the way the market was starting to react to it, was just that we have around 50% of the vineyard is planted in Chardonnay, and Chardonnay tends to be a bit thinner skinned, a bit more susceptible to bad weather, whereas Albarino is sort of a good diversification or a good splitting of that risk, because it ripens later than Chardonnay and the skins are a bit thicker. So from a business point of view, it gives us some resilience. But fundamentally, we planted it because we like it, and there's lots of people out there that love the flavour.
Jane and I have been drinking Albarino now. We've been on a bit of a Albarino bend. I wouldn't call it an Albarino bender, although last night felt like that a little bit, to be honest. But we've been trying different Albarinos, and there doesn't appear to be a single style. And I think possibly because it's a new grape variety, I haven't quite worked it out. But also there's so many different people making Albarino. You actually don't even make one. You're a contract grower.
Yep.
We've talked about contract growers on the podcast in the past, and we'll probably touch on that later on, but how many people buy your Albarino? You've got 5 hectares, so you must be...
Somewhere around 9 or 10 winemakers are buying Albarino. They're not all on the market yet, but what we find is, and one of the things that we're keen that they do is express their own style. So you've got a certain amount of vineyard influence on the finished wines, but if we have good diversity of people making wine in different styles for different markets, then it avoids that situation where they all taste the same. Yeah. That was always a great fear, but it's the way it plays out. There's plenty of diversity out there.
Tasting the same isn't necessarily a problem, particularly if you're trying to build a brand or regional style. And if you want to get international momentum behind a particular grape variety, you need to be able to say this is what it is. But it's a bit like England, England's still feeling its way for different grape varieties as well. And it takes a while to work out not only what you can grow, but also what you can sell.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Okay, so let's talk about the different Albarino styles that you sell your fruit to. Because we've had everything. We've had full barrel fermented, lees work, simple wines, sparkling, I'm not sure if it was tank or carbonation actually.
Yeah, there's a real variety. So if you just kind of run through some of the winemakers. Smith and Sheth is the Cru Albarino that you tried. That's quite a full-bodied style, quite rich. Leave it open for 24 hours and there's a beautiful saline sourness that comes over the stone fruit. I love that. But it's, volume turned up.
Yeah. It's a big gutsy wine, Albarino.
Yeah, really attractive. Yeah, at one end of the spectrum. And if you look at, say, Kenzie, that's a lot more kind of fruit-centric with a lot of texture. Some of the others...
Is that a bit more like left field?
Probably more intensity. Okay. And more texture than left field. I think you tried the Swift Pippi, which is the sparkling one you referred to.
Was that carbonation or tank?
I think it's carbonation.
It tasted pretty good though.
Yeah, it's fantastic for a hot summer day. One of Linda's favourite wines. I had a winemaker the other day say to me they were almost sick of Linda talking about it. Lauren Swift, Pippi's a sort of fairly new bottling of Albarino. She also has a still Albarino, again very, very fruit driven, explosive flavour and sort of targeted. Her whole brand is really sort of selling to that younger market.
Just on that Pippi, I thought it tasted like what you really wish Prosecco would taste like.
Okay.
Because Prosecco can be, often is a little bit wishy-washy these days, but I mean, that had nice, ripe stone fruits in there, all that type of thing. It was really good.
Yeah, it's sparkling and meant to be enjoyed on a hot day, but it's still got some serious flavour behind it as well.
Yep.
Yeah, Lauren's started exporting that to the UK and getting really good feedback. So I think.
Who's the importer? Do you know?
No, I don't.
So it looks like Albarino is quite a flexible grape variety. You're seeing all sorts of wines, oaked, unoaked. Normally the Spanish do leaves work anyway. We even saw some sparkling stuff, like not even just Vino Verdi's little spritzy thing. Is that all the styles that you're seeing in New Zealand?
Yeah, another one would be Albarino with a bit more skin contact. So we have one winemaker, Amy Farnsworth from Amwise, who's doing kind of extended skin contact in the winery. She makes her wines naturally, or makes them as natural wines. So they tend to be more driven with that skin contact flavour.
Are they getting through to the orange? Are they orange wines, or are they not quite there? They're just like a lot of pithiness.
Quite a bit of pithiness. Earlier on, she did do two. One that was amber, and another one which was more fruit driven.
Yep.
I think going forward it would just be a single wine. Definitely sort of an orange tinge to it, and from that skin contact and the phenolics coming through as well.
Okay, what else have we got? What styles? So I'll tell you the ones we've had. Yeah. We had Left Field, which we talked about, being quite a simple style. Yeah. I don't know, maybe a bit of Lee's work, but there's nothing really overt going on. That's not one of yours. We tried the Cru. We've talked about Pippi. Oh, the Albarino brothers we had last night. That's one of your... No, it's one of yours?
No. Most of Left Field and Albarino brothers is coming from Gisborne fruit.
Right.
Yeah. But some of the others, Decibel, they produce a really powerful fruit-driven wine. In 24, real orange characters. So orange peel, mandarin, apricot. Oh, okay. And I that threw me for a little bit. But we had this, we ran a workshop for all our winemakers. We had about 20 people there and a local MW, Stephen Wong, and brought in some around 8 reference wines from Spain. Mm-hmm. And that kind of really taught me something in Spain.
In Rías Baixas?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Just the difference between the Albarino flavours that were coming out of the coastal areas were a lot more kind of lime, yellow fruits. But you go up onto the plateau, it gets a lot hotter. It doesn't have that cooling influence from the sea. A lot of those wines showed those same orange characteristics. So something I was a little bit worried that from that 24 season was a bit non-typical of the variety. Mm-hmm. When you go back and have a really good look in Rías Baixas, they cover that spectrum as well, and it's just down to the seasonal, the temperatures, temperature profile during the season, and how the fruit is ripened.
How do you find? Because I drink a lot of Albarino back in the UK, But I must admit, I'm not drinking absolute top-end, super expensive Albarinos. So how does the fruit character you get compared to maybe the fruit character when you're doing this benchmarking?
I think we definitely have a kind of a fresher, new world style. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely some complexity in some of the higher end Spanish wines that as a region we're still exploring ourselves. So I think in the Smith & Cheth wine, that's an example where the winemaker's taken quite a few different parcels, fermenting them differently, different oak treatment, some in stainless. And I think that's got the potential to sort of develop that complexity that we see in some of the top Spanish wines. Mm-hmm. We've also got another consortium which has been working on wine for several years. So 4 winemakers that have done a lot of vintages in Spain, but happen to live in New Zealand, working together to chase that complexity. So that's not released, and I'll let them talk about it when the time's right. That's another attempt to look at where Albarino can go as a fine wine.
Why Albarino? Because you mentioned it works for you because it complements Chardonnay. You know, it is designed for Galician weather. You know, Vino Verde, Galicia. You know, 1.5 meters of rain a year is wet. Jane and I went down to Rias Baixas a few years ago, and we were there for the days that it was dry. But you just look around, everything is green. You know it's wet. But that doesn't really tell me why Albarino, why now as well?
When we planted the top terrace, that was the second planting for us. We kind of expected to carry on with what we'd done in our first planting, which is Chardonnay, Chenin, Gamay. And what we sort of found was we kind of felt like we had enough of some of those varietals. We did plant more Chardonnay, and we're really happy that we did. But a little bit more diversity. The people were starting to get interested in Albarino, and you could sort of see the demand there. Also, honestly, personal preference is a big part of what we've done as well. Yeah, we planted Chardonnay and Syrah because we love it. We didn't really know Albarino when someone first suggested it to us. Mm-hmm. We had 1 or 2, but the more we tried, we found we loved it. It's important to do something you're passionate about. Same with growing grape varieties. I'd hate to be growing something I didn't enjoy drinking. So the demand is there. It makes sense from a resilience perspective, and it's something we like.
So we're talking about Albarino and its thick skins. I've heard people talk about being bulletproof. What's your experience of that?
Yeah, certainly for the fruit is that thick skin nature of it. It's a sort of carry through weather events without sort of having the pressure that you do on other varieties from things like botrytis. But what we've learnt in the few years that we've been growing it is definitely we still need to look after the canopy. It's the canopy that's producing the sugars, producing the ripeness and driving the vine. I wouldn't say the canopy itself is as bulletproof as the fruit. We still try and look after it with foliar feeds of seaweed, nutrients like magnesium, that just to keep that going and through till harvest.
Are you finding things like mildews on your leaves, or is it other things?
There's definitely still disease pressure on the canopy. I think it's more around nutrition and the healthiness of the leaf, which is obviously driving the whole photosynthesis process.
I've heard people talk about different problems particularly with global warming and concerns about maybe in places like Marlborough anyway, not Hawke's Bay, but the diurnals, they're a bit worried about diurnal temperature range being eaten away or eroded away, particularly, although I was doing some research late last night on it, and it seemed that, from what I can understand, that actually diurnal temperatures are going to get bigger.
Okay.
But what's going to happen is the nighttime temperatures are going to get warmer. The daytime temperatures are going to get hotter faster, so your diurnals are going to get bigger, but you actually want the cold, not the diurnal. It's not just the diurnal range, it's actually the temperature that you want as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. A couple of things. One, we're around 20 minutes inland from the Heratonga Plains, so we sort of get the heat you get down there, but being a bit...
Just on the Heratonga Plains, we're talking about Gimblett Gravels, Bridge Par, that type of area.
Yeah, and the area around sort of Hastings and Napier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're sort of slightly more elevated and away from that moderating influence of the sea. So we do get that fairly decent diurnal shift. We've had days in March where we've gone to 33 during the day and 3 overnight, so 30 degrees of shift. I think the second thing on Albarino specifically, if you look at, say, Chardonnay, people's picking decisions, they tend to be driven by not wanting to lose the acidity, because that really gives you freshness. So a Chardonnay will see the grapes becoming riper and the flavours coming through, and then quite often someone will pull the trigger on a picking decision because they don't want the acid to come down too low while they're waiting for the others to come up. Albarino is the reverse. It has very high acidity, and what we're normally worried about is just how we see the bricks going up, and quite often we'll see the bricks 23 to 24 range.
Potential alcohol?
13,
Yep.
13 and a half. Yep. We don't really want to go to 14, but somewhere in that 13 to 14% alcohol.
Yep.
But the acidities are still really intense. So quite often there we're actually kind of hanging on till the acidity drops to a point where we can take it into the winery and not need to do any deacidification or anything like that.
Okay, so the concern is actually the alcohol getting away on you while you're waiting for the acidity to back off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, but if things get warmer, that won't really help because your alcohols will just creep up faster.
Possibly, but I think those warmer nighttime temperatures will also help bring down the acidity.
Yeah. Okay.
It's one of those things we just need to adapt. This year we've left kind of more leaf cover on than we normally would because we had quite a warm season, and we're playing around with things like splitting the time of pruning to try and bring ripening together. So we can't change at a vineyard level what's happening with the climate, but we constantly evolve how we're growing to try and fine tune it.
You talked about splitting the pruning, and you've got 2 clones that you're running here. Do you want to tell us what the clones are, and how many clones are in New Zealand? How many clones of Albarino are there in the world?
Yeah, so we have 2 clones. One is, or selections. One is a Spanish mass selection, and the second is a Portuguese clonal selection. It's called 635. There's a couple of other Portuguese ones here in New Zealand, so it's at least 4, if not, and I'm sure there's nurseries with 1 or 2 others out there.
When you say mass selection, is that literally, it's not a clone, it's you've gone through and you've just picked the plants they liked?
In Spain, they've gone through and done a mass selection there, and then that's been imported to New Zealand to one of the big nurseries here. And they replicate it from there. But it's not us going out and doing the selection. It's one that's been done in Spain.
No, but if you do a mass selection, those have they been clonally identified as particular clones, or is it's just a mass? I'm just trying to understand it because mass selection used to be quite that's how you did it, and then people moved away from it, and now you're hearing about people going back to those type of older practices to get variations. Yeah,
as far as I know, it's just a matter of going out in the vineyard and selecting vines that are growing well, producing good fruit. I know certainly for some of the Syrah selections in New Zealand that are labelled MS or called mass selection, it's literally that. There's not a single clonal instance of Syrah that it's a mixture. With the Spanish port mass selection, I'm not sure.
If you do that, that means you must have a reasonable amount of clonal diversity perhaps in your vineyard. Does that express itself with, do you see picking times for different parts of the vine? Because you don't have a homogeneous block if you've got a mass selection of different clones in there. So things like veraison and picking times and all that will vary a little bit.
Between the Portuguese and the Spanish selections we have, we definitely see differences. They have different bunch structures. They come through with different flavour profiles, and you alluded to it before, the ripening is different. In the past we've always just grown them together, and you'd always see Portuguese 635 ripen probably 7-8 days earlier than the Spanish MS, which is not optimal because sometimes when winemakers are picking small parcels and they want to pick them both in one visit or co-ferment them, in which case you need them picked together. So what we've done this year is kind of prune Spanish one early and the Portuguese one late to basically delay the bud burst on the Portuguese one to get them more in sync.
What pruning are you talking about here? Are you talking about the winter pruning?
Talking about winter pruning. So there's kind of a rule of thumb. Every month that you push pruning later, it will delay bud burst by around a week.
Oh, I did not know that.
So we sort of have a split of probably 2.5 or probably 2 months between the two. We probably saw 10 days difference in bud burst.
Yeah.
And then they ended up flowering together, and we'll know in 3 or 4 weeks whether they ripen together or not.
All right, Ian, that's been a pretty interesting look at Albarino in New Zealand. I hope it works for you guys. Certainly the wines we've tried have been really, really good, and I'm sort of impressed with them. Cheers very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, that ends our interview with Ian. I've got 2 further interviews with Ian, which we'll probably run through in the next couple of weeks. But one of the wines that Ian's grapes are used to make was the Swift sparkling wine. Do you remember that?
I do, yes.
Well, I haven't told you this.
You've bought some, haven't you? I can see the look on your face.
I have. I've bought 6 bottles of it from Givino out in Somerset. I found it. I was like, well, he said that someone was importing it, so I found someone who was retailing it, and that was about 17 quid for it's carbonated Albarino from New Zealand. So I've got 6 bottles turning up.
And Chris,
tomorrow.
you did this without even running it past me.
I found out it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Probably a good thing.
Okay. So we'll try that. I remember I enjoyed that
yes,
wine.
It was good. It was.
And we've got the same vintage we're having in New Zealand. So we'll have that. And we'll try it out with a few people and see what they think.
I'm actually quite looking forward to that, Chris.
All right, Jane, let's get the answer to this week's Patreon flashcard question. And the question is this. Which red grape variety is the most important in Southern Rhone?
My instinct was to say Syrah, and then I thought Grenache. And now I'm thinking, is Syrah more Northern Rhone and Grenache bigger in Southern Rhone? It's a risk, but I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to say Grenache.
You are 100% right.
I am happy about that.
Yeah.
Syrah must still be big, but...
It's still there, but yeah, Grenache is the main one. You think about all the Provence rosés. They're all Grenache based. Chateauneuf du Pape is Grenache dominated. Syrah is a blending component like Mourvedre and all the other ones like Claret and all those many Southern Rhone grapes. But Grenache, most important in Southern Rhone. You're absolutely right. Northern Rhone, the only red grape variety allowed is Syrah.
Yep.
So in Northern Rhone, it would definitely be Syrah, but in Southern Rhone, it is Grenache.
But obviously, you did just say Provence there, which isn't part of Southern Rhone.
No.
It is Provence.
No,
but it's nearby, neighbours.
It's all warm Mediterranean climate.
Yep.
And that's the thing about Grenache is that warm Mediterranean climate in Southern Rhone is quite often drought. There's a lot of drought in Southern Rhone, and Grenache is one of these grape varieties that do well in a drought condition.
Well, listeners, I hope you got Grenache too, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thank you to our patrons for your support. If you'd like to find out more about Patreon, head over to patreon.com/UK Wine Show.
And don't forget to join in time for our Patreon get-together.
On Wednesday, the 20th of May, 7:30 p.m.
Until next week, cheers and good drinking.
The UK Wine Show is a weekly podcast brought to you by 3050, the wine tasting company. The show is produced by Chris Scott and the news is read by Jane Scott. To listen to other shows, visit ukwineshow.co.uk. Thank you for listening.